Good morning, everybody. Good morning, people of Grange. I want to speak to you today a little bit about humanities, which is the study of subjects that have to do with us as human beings growing our humanity. And the two main subjects at school that come within humanities are history and geography. And when we study history and geography, we have to ask ourselves a question. And I'm going to ask this question more specifically about history. Why do we study history? I mean, you could argue that history is all about things that have happened a long time ago. Why is it important for us to study history? Now, a famous person from history called Winston Churchill, and he was the Prime Minister when Britain were involved in the Second World War. The Second World War happened over 70 years ago. And in that Second World War, which many of you might have learnt about in history, and if you haven't learnt about it in history in primary school, you're going to definitely learn about it in secondary school. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of Great Britain during the Second World War, which was between 1939 and 1945. He said, "Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it." Now, Winston Churchill himself, he was paraphrasing. That means he was taking the words of somebody else and putting it in his own words and getting the same message across. He was paraphrasing a philosopher called Santayana. And that philosopher, Santayana, he said, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So let's think about what Winston Churchill, Santayana was saying. The most important thing about learning from history is that we learn lessons from it so we can do better in the present, so that we can do better for the future. Now, I was speaking to some of the year 4 children who are learning about the Mayan culture, which is from thousands of years ago. And what they said to me is, it's just so interesting just to hear about it. And that's one thing I am going to say about history, is if you've got the character strength of curiosity, it's really interesting to know what happened a long time ago. How are things different? I mean, in the lifetime of my grandparents, they lived in times before there were electric light bulbs. They lived in times before there were toilets inside the houses. There were toilets outside the houses. They lived, so many things have changed. They lived before computers, the way we have computers. So it's just interesting to know what was the world like in their time. So curiosity, that's another reason. And then there's another reason to know, who are we? I mean, how did we get here to this point in our lives? What shaped us? And we go back to history, we can see what shaped us. We can learn where we came from. And as Winston Churchill and Santayana say, we can learn lessons so that we, as we grow up and have influence in the world, we can do better. We can make progress. The problem is that this is another famous quote, but nobody's quite sure where this quote comes from. They say history is written by the victors. The people who win the battles, they're the ones who write history. Because if you think about it, how do we know what happened thousands of years ago? It's because somebody wrote down, and we've got the writings, we've got texts that tell us what happened. The problem is, often those texts are written by specific people, and it's their story, but the story of the other people might be completely different. So that's one of the problems of history, is what truly happened back then. We've almost got to be like investigators. We've got to be like detectives to work out what happened in history. The other thing is that if we're learning from the past and making progress the whole time, then sometimes we've got to accept that the people who came before us, our ancestors, our forefathers, our grandparents, great-grandparents, everybody, they might have made mistakes. And that's okay as long as we learn from those mistakes and make progress. Student Council this last week have been doing some amazing problem solving. They've raised problems, and in Thursday, the Student Council are going to sit down together and I'm going to show them the Polya method, which is from Grange, the Polya method about how to problem solve. And they're going to come up with some solutions for the problems we've got at Grange right now so that we can keep making progress. So tomorrow afternoon, we are having a learning walk. This is from Edwina Nummey, who is our school improvement partner. She's a very experienced teacher and school leader, and she helps our school to be the best that it can be. And she's going to walk around and look at how we are learning history. And then she will help us to improve how we're learning history. So everybody, please get involved in your history lessons. Learn from the past so that we don't repeat mistakes, so that we actually make progress going into the future. Let's be great. Let's be Grange. Let's live our lives with confidence and consideration, because if we do, we are shaping ourselves so that we develop and can help the world to make progress. That's why learning is so powerful and so important. Looking really forward to seeing and hearing from Edwina how the learning walk goes.